Nothing But the Truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa of India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. This is my weekly X-ray of key issues that matter to you without holding back on the truth. Who will win the upcoming Bihar Assembly election? That's the big question as the high-stakes poll battle gets underway, and there are 243 seats up for grabs, and the target for any party or alliance is to secure a simple majority of 122 seats to rule this very important state. Now, there are close to 80 million voters, give or take a couple of million, depending on what the EIC Election Commission does finally, and that will these people will decide just who governs them on November 14th. Till recently, the Bihar Assembly poll was seen as a bipolar contest. The ruling National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, is helmed by Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, the long-lasting Chief Minister of the Janata Dal United, or JDU. The Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, is the dominant partner and has two deputy chief ministers, Samrat Chaudhary and Vijay Kumar Sinha. The NDA has several other coalition partners. The most prominent of them is the Lok Janshakti Party, or LJP, headed by Union Minister Chirag Paswan, who is seen as the rising star of the NDA. Then there is the mahagathbandhan, or MGB, the Grand Alliance in English, with the Rashtriya Janata Dal, or RJD, headed by the youthful Tejasvi Yadav, who's just 35 years, who almost won the 2020 Assembly elections. But RJD was led down with a very poor showing by the Congress party. The MGB also has major communist parties as its partners. We'll get more into that. But let's look at the third force that has emerged in this election, which is the Jan Suraj Party, headed by pollster turned politician Prashant Kishore, who has been gaining traction with his campaign with his all-or-nothing approach. So the big questions are, and we will answer them, is will Nitish Kumar, the veteran helmsman of over 2 decades, secure one of the last endorsements of trust and remain Chief Minister? Will Tejasvi Yadav, the young inheritor of the Mandal legacy, finally convert aspiration into authority? Or will Prashant Kishore, the strategist turned crusader, break the script altogether? We will look at 10 X factors that will determine who will win this crucial Bihar election. And to help me analyze these X factors, I'm delighted to welcome Amitabh Tiwari, an independent poll strategist who runs a continuous tracker called Vote Vibes on the Bihar elections. So Amitabh Tiwari, welcome to Nothing But the Truth again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Now, Amitabh, before we get into the 10 X factors, just a bit of background of what happened in the 2020 Assembly elections that proved to be an extremely close contest so that we can put all this into perspective. The NDA was able to scrape through because the BJP won a handsome 74 seats, even though its partner, the JDU, won only 43 seats. Together, they totaled 117 seats. They had to use the 8 seats won by their alliance partners, the Hindustani Awami Morcha, or HAM, headed by former Chief Minister Jitin Ram Manjhi, and the Vikashshil Insan Party, headed by Mukesh Sahni, to cross that majority mark of 122 seats. The RJD under Tejasvi Yadav did outstandingly well, but fell short. Tejasvi Yadav and the RJD won 75 seats, but was led down by the Congress, which won only 19 seats. And as a result, the MGB, along with its other alliance partners, won 110 seats. 12 short of a majority, which meant that the NDA took charge. Now, when you look at the vote percentage secured between the two alliances in 2020, you get an idea of just how close the battle was. The NDA secured 37.26% and the MGB 37.23%. So there's only a 0.03% difference between them. So Amitabh, let's come down to X factor number 1, the alliance chemistry. And when it comes to the alliance partners, which alliance and its major constituents look stronger this time, and why? Will the three-cornered fight help the NDA or the MGB?
No, essentially, when we talk about alliance chemistry, there are 3 key things. One is the campaign, second is the chief ministerial phase, and third is the ticket distribution or the selection of candidates.
Let's look
Now,
at the campaign, because we will come to the leaders there, but let's look first at the campaign and the alliances that they have formed with the seat distribution, possible seat distribution.
so when we talk about CM phase, both are not very clear about the CM phase, and we'll discuss in detail later.
Right.
On the seat distribution also, there is a lot of headache going on in both the NDA camp and the Mahagathbandhan. We've seen that. But when it comes to campaign, and I was there in Bihar in September first week, the NDA has a more coherent campaign than the Mahagathbandhan.
Right.
So across Bihar, you will see posters of one common poster with Nitish and Prime Minister Modi on it, with a slogan, whatever it is, let's say Rozgar Bahar NDA Sarkar, and a mixture of or a very permutation combination of these slogans. There was not a single poster of a Mahagathbandhan Sarkar. There are big hoardings of Tejasvi Sarkar. So it shows lack of coherence in campaign. Even if you see Congress, it seems will come up with its own manifesto. RJD will come up with its own manifesto. So there seems to be some lack of coordination going on in the Mahagathbandhan.
What I want you to look at is the constituents of these. Let's take the BJP, for instance, the NDA. The BJP won 19.46% of votes last time. It contested 110 seats and won 74 seats. That is a very, very high strike rate. Now, if you take a look at their major partner, JDU, which was the senior partner at that time, it wins 15.3% of the votes, down by 1.4% as compared to the previous election. Contested 115, but won only 43 seats. Right. So if you take a look to this time at the constituents that are there, the BJP, the JDU, and this time, of course, has the LJP with it. What would be the, say, percentage strengths if you look at each of these alliances, and where would that, they get the balance in terms of the percentages that you're talking about?
Yeah. So essentially, if last election was 37% each, now if you add LJP, which contested separately, and the RLSP, which is now Upendra Kushwaha's Rashtriya Lok Manch, this goes up to around 45% for the NDA. Wow. But then you have to remove the 2% which the VIP backed. So it falls to 43%. So the adjusted vote share sort of for NDA is 43%. And that 2% of the VIP gets added to Mahagathbandhan, which sits at 39%. So this is the adjusted vote share.
And when we talk if you take the RJD, when we're talking of the MGB, RJD got 23.1% last time, which of course was less. But and if you take a look at the Congress, they get about 9.48%. So if you look at that, will they? What is their sort of their alliance partners with the Communist Party and VIP? How much does that seem to make a difference this time?
No, essentially it's largely status quo. Okay. Because most of these parties of both the alliances are largely holding on to their vote shares. And when we talk about alliance chemistry, transfer of votes is a very important thing. So what happened in 2020, as you mentioned? Wherever BJP candidate was there, JDU supporters transferred 70% of their votes to the BJP candidate. Right. But wherever JDU candidate was there, BJP supporters transferred only 55% of the votes. That's why you see a dip in the strike rate of JDU and a dip in its tally, because 15% moved to the LJP, which was contesting separately. Correct. So there was significant leakage in vote transfer between BJP and JDU. That could decline this time because LJP is part of NDA. Amongst Mahagathbandhan, wherever there was RJD candidate, 82% Congress supporters voted for them. And wherever there was Congress candidate, 83% RJD supporters voted. So in terms of vote transfer, Mahagathbandhan exhibited a higher degree of vote transfer than NDA. What is the risk this time in NDA? There is a trust deficit between JDU and LJP. LJP has never sought names on the name or votes on the name of Nitish Kumar. It has always sought votes on the name of Prime Minister in Lok Sabha elections. Right. And there is a historical rift because JDU, or rather Nitish, created this Mahadalit category to weaken LJP, whose vote share declined from 10% to 6%. So it halved its vote share.
Right.
Now, there is also a trust deficit between the supporters of JDU and BJP, because
Right.
one third of BJP supporters, as per Vote
Mhm.
Vibe survey, do not want BJP to name Nitish Kumar as the CM
Ah,
face. So,
interesting.
what happens to these one third voters
Mhm.
when they have a JDU candidate contesting and not a BJP candidate contesting? They don't have LJP, but they
Right.
have a third force in the form of Prashant Kishore, as you mentioned. So
And
there is a
that I
risk
want you
as
to
vote
come.
in
Who will?
NDA.
I mean, when you mentioned Prashant Kishore, I want you to analyze where his votes are going to go. I mean, is it going to hit the NDA harder or the MGB?
No, see, essentially, Bihar always has 20-22% others vote.
Right.
Almost 8 to 10% is independent vote share.
Hmm.
So a large section of his votes, he's likely to consolidate the others vote, because that is an anti-MJB or an anti-NDA vote, which is scattered, and now it has an official face and an institutional face, let's say. Secondly, it will damage both the alliances, because
Hmm.
even LJP, we talk a lot about how it damaged JDU, but
Right.
LJP got more votes in 73 seats than the victory margin. On 40, it damaged NDA, and on 32, actually, it damaged Mahagathbandhan as well. So a
Okay.
net damage was 8 seats against the NDA, you can say. So here,
Right.
depending upon the caste and the quality of the candidates, both alliances, it can damage. What
Okay.
components it can damage? So
Yeah.
when it is raising corruption charges, it's likely to damage the educated middle class voter of the
Right.
BJP. The middle class is not a significant number, and the upper caste voters. And
Right.
for Mahagathbandhan, he's also getting traction from the youth, which was in the last election largely backing Tejasvi. So he's
Right.
denting the youth vote of the Mahagathbandhan, and also some marginalized and minority community votes.
Okay, so let's come to X factor number two. Having dealt with the alliances, let's look at the leadership personalities and their qualities. To sum up, we have Nitish Kumar, tested but fatigued, also has health considerations. Tejashwi Yadav, aspirational but untested. Prashant Kishore, visionary but rootless. Chirag Paswan, charismatic, let's say, but structurally weak. So, Amitabh, will this election be just a fight of parties, but can also be a referendum on personalities? What does your poll tracker say about the leadership trends?
So when we talk about leaders, if you see, there is a consensus across surveys that Tejasvi Yadav is leading the CM ratings. So it
Right.
is anywhere between 32 to 35% across surveys. In our survey, latest survey, Vote Vibe survey, it is 35%. Across surveys, Nitish Kumar's popularity, or rather rating as chief ministerial face, has also declined. So in our survey, it is around 24%. In some surveys like C Voter, it has dipped to around 16-17% also.
Right.
And then the third most preferred CM face is Prashant Kishore. Again, across surveys, anywhere between 10 to 15%. In C Voter, it is a bit higher at 20%.
Right.
So Nitish Kumar's popularity has dipped, because in 2020, both
Mm-hmm.
Tejasvi and Nitish Kumar had popularity ratings of 37% each. So there is a
Wow.
big decline in Nitish Kumar's popularity. However, there is a small dent also in Tejasvi's popularity, which we were discussing about, that the
Right.
youth, which largely was supporting him, Prashant Kishore has also made some headway in the youth vote bank. Now, the issue is that the decline in popularity of Nitish is not being pocketed by Tejasvi. It is being
Right.
pocketed by Prashant Kishore or
Mm.
some other leaders of NDA. So while Mahagathbandhan, or rather Tejasvi, leads amongst the CM race, on a combined basis, NDA has a bigger bouquet of leaders, or you can call bench strength. So it has
Right.
Chirag, who is pitching in with 9%, Samrat
Mm.
Chaudhary with 6%, Jitin Ram Manji with 1.5%, 2%. So on a
Right.
combined basis, the NDA faces have ratings of around 40, 42, whereas
Right.
Mahagathbandhan leaders have around 35, 37. And the combined faces bring their own caste community votes to the NDA. So Paswan
Right.
community 5%, Jitin Ram
Correct.
Manji community 3%, etc. Samrat Chaudhary is a emerging Koiri Kushwaha leader,
Right.
4%. So that's comparatively missing currently in the Mahagathbandhan.
Okay. let's take X factor number 3, pro-incumbency versus anti-incumbency. And if you see, Nitish is leveraging fear of Jungle Raj and memories of insecurity before 2005 when Lalu Prasad ran the government, plus the qualities of what he calls pragriti, progress, and sushasan, which he's known for, or efficiency, and positioning himself not just as the past, but also the future with roads coming up and metros and development. Tejasvi seems to be leveraging fatigue, saying 20 years is enough and that Bihar needs a change. Prashant Kishore says, throw them all out. So what does your tracker say about anti-incumbency and pro-incumbency? Is anger stronger than trust in Bihar right now?
So if we look at the tracker for the past 3 months, the anti-incumbency against the government has stayed flat at around 48%.
Which is high or low? What is when you say 48%?
See, in the first past the post system, when no political party gets a 50% vote share, except for maybe Gujarat and some northeastern states, and when a party was able to form government even with 37% vote share, it means that 63% people had voted against the party.
Correct.
So in first past the post system, around 40% pro-incumbency is also enough to win an election, because the anti-incumbency vote largely gets divided. It is not consolidated in favor of one party. So 48% is staying flat. Now in July, when we had done the tracker, the pro-incumbency or strong pro-incumbency was 18%, and neutral, which is neither anti nor pro, was 22%.
Right.
So in political strategy, anything which is neutral is also considered as positive because it's not negative. So it was 40 versus 48. But in the last 3 months, what has happened, and NDA has realized that there is anti-incumbency, so they have announced a slew of schemes. So there are 5 core vote blocks in any election: Mahila, Yuva, Kisan, Senior Citizen, Labor. Now they have announced schemes for all of them.
I'll come into the details of that welfare thing, but I wanted, in terms of the anti-incumbency and pro-incumbency, you are saying at the moment it is still holding, despite the fact there is an anti-incumbency of 47% against Nitish in this one. Is that correct?
Pro-incumbency increased from 18% to now 34% because of the schemes.
Okay.
And the people who were saying neutral have declined from 22 to 12.
So it has moved in favor of Nitish. That's what you're saying.
So the pro-incumbency is moving in favor. So the pro-incumbency plus neutral incumbency is 46%. So it's largely balanced. 46% want the government to return. 48% maybe do not want the government to return. But 48% vote share is getting divided or fragmented between Mahagathbandhan 40%, 39-40, and Jan Suraj 8-9%. Whereas the 46% pro-incumbency is going towards NDA around 41-42%, and 4-5% is going to others.
So we had analyzed 2 critical factors apart from the alliance chemistry, which was the number one thing, but the fact that in leadership terms, Tejasvi leads, but if you add up the NDA constituents, they're almost on par or in fact ahead. And if you take a look at pro-incumbency, anti-incumbency, they kind of wipe out each other in that sense, because there seems to be an upward movement in your tracker towards pro-incumbency. So let's come to one of the key factors, which is the welfare economy. And we saw recently Nitish Kumar, just before the elections, had announced a major dole for the women, just a day or two before that, before elections were announced, for rupees 10,000 rupees to each of them. It benefited, I think, close to 21 million. He has beneficiaries, not only of this, but other kinds of things. And he has 18.9 million families receiving free electricity. Pensions were raised or being proposed to be raised from 400 to 1,100. And you've got a 1,000 monthly allowance for unemployed youth. So if you take a look at what Tejasvi is countering with promises of not only just the jobs, but a host of other benefits, and PK talks not of handouts, but of structural dignity. So Amitabh, will voters choose instant cash or long-term reform? What are the game changers in this, you feel?
No, essentially, as you mentioned, Nitish has come up with schemes for all these 5 groups which we were mentioning about. And some of them are cash doles. So like increasing pension, unemployment allowance, 5,000 sort of a uniform allowance for 16 lakh laborers. And we have this 10,000 you can say a seed capital for promoting
Right.
entrepreneurship among women to 1.21 crore women. So all of
Correct.
this is happening. So governments cannot promise, they need to deliver. Opposition
Mm,
can promise.
mm,
So in terms of that, NDA realized, because it was falling in the pro-incumbency rating, that they need to do something. Now we've
right.
seen in MP, Maharashtra and Jharkhand, MP and
Hmm.
Maharashtra in favor of NDA, and in Jharkhand in favor of India bloc, that these cash income schemes, specifically to women, do make a difference. In fact, they have turned
Right.
around elections in a way. MP, everybody was saying Congress is ahead, but BJP scored big. Maharashtra BJP won more than three-fourth, or even more than three-fourth seats. And in Jharkhand also, JMM won 51 out of 81 seats. So these schemes do work.
Okay.
In Bihar, we have to understand also that Bihar is the lowest per capita income state.
Right.
So if this sort of a scheme is working in Maharashtra, which is the top three state in terms of per capita GDP, or in Delhi, which is the highest per capita state, the context is very, very different in Bihar. 65% of families do not even earn 10,000 rupees per month.
Ah,
Per capita income is 5,500. It will
right.
become 7,000 as per the 2025-26 financial year budget. So it's a very big number. So now we have to see whether this formula again works or not. Opposition has promised things, but sometimes what people feel is that cash in hand is much more valuable than cash which will be received in the future, because future is always uncertain and risky. In terms of the financial stress on the budget, so if you see the budget, still, to give credit to Nitish Kumar, Bihar runs a revenue surplus budget.
That's true.
But these amounts which he has promised are very big. So it could run into a revenue deficit next year. It still has some 3% fiscal deficit projected. So it could also impact the fiscal deficit of the state as well going forward. But to be fair to him, he has not fallen into the trap of promising a per month cash support to women.
Right.
Because if Maharashtra and Delhi are not able to bear it, Bihar would not have been able to bear it at all. So it's a
Right.
one-time payment. One can again argue whether it's a bribe or whatever, whatever. But these are things which, as media, as institutions like the ECI, political parties, the judiciary, they will have to think over all these tricks which the parties are now employing.
But the fact is that this is, in some senses, advantage NDA because of the kind of schemes that it has come out with, and the anticipation is what voters will look at when they have the MGB schemes that's there. Let's come to X factor number 5, and I'm going a little national in this, and I'm looking at Narendra Modi versus Rahul Gandhi. For the BJP, Bihar is important nationally as it is dependent on the support of the Bihar Lok Sabha MPs, which they have 30. And that has been divided equally in terms of JDU and the BJP, 12 each, apart from the LJP, let's not forget that. And therefore, they need this particular election not to retain the kind of majority in the Lok Sabha, but at least not be threatened by any sort of fall in the popularity in one of their major constituents or one of the major states, that is Bihar. And Congress, meanwhile, seems to be reinvigorated by Rahul Gandhi's vote chori campaign in response to this very special intensive revision or controversial SIR of Bihar's electoral rolls and the subsequent what he called voter Adhikar Yatra. But the question is, can Rahul Gandhi turn street mobilization into ballot conversion? Also, Bihar often answers differently from Delhi. So, Amitabh, will Bihar be voting for its chief minister, or the Prime Minister Modi, as he had demonstrated last time, has a lot of popularity? Will that continue?
This election marks the entry of national leaders in a hyper-local election in Bihar. Never in Bihar, the NDA was asking votes in the name of Prime Minister. Of course, in 2015, JDU contested separately. So 2010 was the fight between Nitish and Lalu. 2015, it was Nitish plus Lalu versus Modi, because Nitish was not part of this. And then in 2020 was Nitish versus Tejasvi. But as we discussed, there is a dent in the popularity of both Nitish and Tejasvi. Nitish more, Tejasvi marginal. So therein comes the national leadership. which is Modi and Rahul. So this time
Right.
the fight is Nitish plus Modi versus Tejasvi plus Rahul. The C voter or the mood of the nation also shows that Rahul closes the gap in the prime ministerial ratings. Now it is around 52% for Modi ji versus 41% for Rahul ji.
Right.
One third, on a conceptual basis, one third people vote on leadership, one third on party symbol, one third on candidate. Now, this
Mhm.
one third who are voting on leadership, 15% are voting on CM face, and 17% are going to vote in the name of the Prime Minister face, which means Modi or Rahul. So, this marks the entry of national leaders and also shows the weakening of regional parties in Bihar. Now, Rahul Gandhi, of course, through his vote chori yatra and of course carrying forward with the Constitution Khatre Mein Hai theme, is getting some traction amongst the educated and youth EBC and SC communities which have not traditionally voted for the Congress party in the Mandal era, which used to vote for Congress in the past. So Congress, or rather say, let's say Rahul, does bring in some vote banks to Mahagathbandhan, which RJD cannot on its own bring. So it's like the upper caste and the marginalized communities,
Right.
like EBC or Dalits.
Interesting. And so, in some senses, Congress has showed up its strength as compared to 2020, may not be the weak link that it was in the combination in the MGB as it was last time. Now, let's look at X factor number 6, which is a very, very critical thing, the women voters in Bihar. And we have seen this trend for over a decade now where women have outvoted men in Bihar. And if you recall, in the 2020 assembly elections, 59.7% of women voted compared to 54.5% of men, a gap of more than 5 percentage points. And that gap has been consistent since 2010, and it's Nitish Kumar who has cultivated this loyalty through welfare schemes, self-help groups, and prohibition. Nitish Kumar and the NDA's latest move that we talked about just before the Model Code of Conduct came was this transfer that we discussed of 10,000 rupees each into accounts of 2.1 million people, women, sorry, which is an expansion of the Mahila Rozgar Yojana, which, as you said, has 21 million beneficiaries. So, Amitabh, is Nitish still the unquestioned choice of women? And will this money transfer, as we discussed earlier, keep the women with him? Or is Tejasvi's promise of 2,500 rupees monthly compensation for women beginning as soon as he wins, break this whole stranglehold that Nitish has over the women voter? What's your tracker showing?
Yes, so women have been traditionally backing Nitish Kumar because largely of the schemes, as you mentioned, and also of a perceived better law and order situation. The women have been voting large numbers also because men migrate to other states and some of the poor
Correct.
people are not in a position to afford to just come back and vote in the elections. Now, if you see 2020, 167 seats, women turnout was more than men. Out of that 167, 99 were won by NDA and 61 by Mahagathbandhan. So almost, you can say, a 30-seat lead there itself, which was neutralized to a large extent by Mahagathbandhan, where men voted more
Right.
than women in the balance seats. Now, this 1.21 crore women voters, when they get 10,000 rupees, this is around 35% of the total women electoral roll. Also, since only one person is getting this per family, and around there are 3 voters per family, this translates into 3.63 crore voters potentially, which is almost half of the vote base of 7.42 crores.
Right.
Now, women also vote on caste lines. It's not that they vote only on the basis of development or schemes, because the lead of NDA amongst women in 2020 was just 2%, just 2%, or rather just
Interesting.
1%, perhaps, just 1%, despite all the schemes and everything.
Right.
However, what this does is that it impacts women, or it has the potential of switching votes, some votes from Mahagathbandhan or Jansuraj or others to
Right.
NDA. In a closely contested election, even 1%, 2%, 3% switch is a big switch. When we asked voters this question before the money was dispersed, or the first installment was disbursed on 26th of September, 5.8% of voters said that they could think of switching from a Mahagathbandhan or a Jansuraj or even others to NDA.
Right.
So that's the potential vote catch, you can say, which can happen because of these schemes. However, there is also some discontent amongst the women who have not received this money. So that also plays as a counter consolidation. But NDA hopes that a segment of the MY core block of MGB, even if some women voters are influenced through this scheme, then it will be able to win this election.
Okay, now let's look at X factor number 7, another very big voting bank, the youth quotient. And Bihar has 1.7 crore or 17 million voters aged between 18 and 29. And 14 lakh or 1.4 million are first-time voters in this election alone. Now, according to the Lokniti CSDS data, I think in 2020, which you know better than anybody else, the youth vote was evenly split, 37% for the Mahagathbandhan and 36% for the NDA, 1% more for the Mahagathbandhan. In some senses, this time the stakes are higher because Nitish is at 74 years old, is no longer seen as aspirational. Tejasvi at 35 years old is seen as someone of the future, and Prashant Kishore is promising disruption over continuity. With only 4.95% of Bihar's population formally employed, unemployment and migration, which you mentioned earlier, remains some of the biggest emotional triggers when it comes to voting. So, Amitabh, are young voters gravitating towards promises of jobs, and who is likely to get a majority of the votes this time round, and why?
So if we see the anti-incumbency sentiment, which is 48% at the state level, it is 57% amongst 18 to 24 voters. It's largely because they may perhaps not be relating to Nitish Kumar, who is 74 years of age. And the NDA does not have an alternate young leadership. They are not positioning Chirag as a CM candidate. However, this 57% votes is getting split between Mahagathbandhan, which is Tejasvi Yadav, and Prashant Kishore. Because Prashant Kishore's highest number of supporters are from youth. Unemployment is the biggest factor. Around 40% people say unemployment is the factor. But Prashant Kishore has also made some headway amongst the youth. So he's likely to split the vote of the youth. Youth vote also, though in population terms, it is 65%, less than 35 years of age. But among the voters, 18 to 29 age category is only 25%. And if you take it up to 39, it is 47%. But 39 is not youth per se. Why? Because here youth, when we talk about 18 to 29 or even let's say 18 to 35, which becomes roughly 35% of vote base, they have not seen the alleged Jungle Raj of Lalu Yadav, because 35 would mean they would have been just born in 1990.
Correct.
Would have been in teenage years by 2005. So that's why also this age group shows a higher anti-incumbency, because whatever they've seen is largely of this NDA government, and they do not have anything to compare with this alleged Jungle Raj of Mahagathbandhan. So they also consume everything on social media. They also consume everything on social media. That's why Prashant is also able to make some dent here.
But clearly advantage towards Tejasvi Yadav on this.
Advantage towards opposition. Yeah.
Yes. And also the fact that while Prashant Kishore could actually attract a lot of these things in trackers, when it comes to a decision to voting, people will say, who's likely to be the winning combination? And if they feel that the MGB is going to do that, they might just say, let's give them a chance rather than Prashant Kishore, because they don't want their vote to be wasted. But that has to be seen. Now let's look at the X factor number 8, which is the caste combination, the master key when it comes to Bihar, which everyone talks about. The NDA goes into this election holding the 36% EBC, or extremely backward class vote, which Nitish Kumar is the natural leader. The Mahagathbandhan starts with its 30% Muslim Yadav core, the 32% Muslim Yadav core, the MY core that you talked about. The BJP seems to retain its influence over the forward Hindu caste. Chirag Paswan brings a crucial 5%. Paswan Dalit bloc now realigned with the NDA, that is going to, hopefully he stays with the NDA, that for the NDA, that he doesn't contest independently of them. And meanwhile, Tejasvi is working overtime to expand his MY base, offering land grants, higher quotas, and social justice platforms to the non-Yadav OBC and Mahadalits that's there. And if you take a look at the breakup, Amitabh, you're looking at, say, 15% upper caste, you're looking at 27% OBC, 32% EBC, and of course about 19% scheduled caste, with 1% going to scheduled tribes. So is caste still the destiny in Bihar, or is Prashant Kishore right when he says this time governance may finally outrank birth? What is your tracker showing on this front? Where are the castes moving, and how decisive will it be this time?
See, if we ask people, rarely people say that they vote on caste. They would talk about PM face, development issues, etc., etc. However, there is a Aziz Premji study of 2018, a bit old, which says that 55% people in India prefer leaders of their own caste.
Correct.
And this number is 57% in Bihar. So caste
Right.
is cast in stone, one can say. But on the opposite, there are 43% people who are not voting on caste lines. They are voting on development issues, etc. And this is largely who Prashant Kishore, or even say, let's say, Tejasvi, if he wants to expand his vote base, would try to do. Now, if you see the population, as you mentioned, 32% is considered as the vote block or the target addressable market, let's say, in corporate jargon of mahagathbandhan, and 68% is considered the vote block or the segment for NDA.
Correct.
But mahagathbandhan gets 37% vote and NDA gets 37%. So there is significant leakage in this 68% core vote block of NDA. So Hindutva plays a lesser role in Bihar compared to neighboring UP. It plays more role in North Bihar, lesser in South Bihar, where caste again plays a big role. Now, how do these parties get this vote share? If you see 37% each, how are they getting? So you can roughly say that of the 32% Muslim Yadav vote, 3/4 of it goes to Mahagathbandhan. So that makes it 24%.
Right.
And of the 68% non-Yadav, OBC, upper caste, EBC, Dalit vote, 1/4 goes to Mahagathbandhan. So that is roughly 17%.
Right.
So 24 plus 17 is roughly 41%. That's the
starting block.
That's the starting. Here 68%, you can say around 60%, 65%, 2/3 almost goes to NDA. So that makes it roughly 30-31%. And 1/4 of this block, which is the MY block, that makes it another 8%. So they also end up at 40. So 40, 40, and the rest is around 20, which is the core vote block I am talking about. Now, as you mentioned, the MGB cannot win without having one more vote block from EBC or the Dalit community, because even Mahadalits and Dalits both are in NDA camp. Right. In 2020, 40% Dalits voted for NDA, 25% for Mahagathbandhan, 35% for others. LJP also got a significant share.
Right.
So if you adjust that, it will be like 50-25, 50-30 sort of in favor of NDA. But in the 2024 Lok Sabha election, it became almost 58-42.
That's true.
Because of this constitution khatre mein, the other.
And I think NDA, of course, led finally with 173 seats, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 173 and 67 for this. Out of the 6 SC seats, they still retained 5. One was won by the Congress party. So there is some movement, or was some movement, in the Dalit community. Now there are 3 key caste groups, or rather we have to discuss Dalit, so or we may discuss it in future. Yeah. So again, caste is cast in stone here. The ability of alliances to make a dent in each other's caste block, that is the key to victory. Just retaining their own caste blocks would not help them to emerge victorious. That's why the EBC vote, which is 26% Hindu EBC and around 10% Muslim EBC, and this Dalit vote becomes important. Congress is talking about the EBC vote. However, this EBC vote does not have an identity. Because there are 113 sub-caste groups in the EBC bloc.
Right.
There is only 5 caste groups which are more than 2% of population. 4 Hindu and 1 Muslim.
Right.
The Congress or the MGB gave only 9% tickets to EBCs against a population of 26% Hindus. The NDA also gave only 17%. There are only 12% MLAs and 15% MPs from the EBC group. So they need representation. So the Sankalp Patra is fine, but if more tickets are given to EBCs, just like the Akhilesh did in UP, then only Mahagathbandhan will be able to make some dent in this key vote block.
Very interesting analysis. I may have mentioned 32% EBC, but you're right, it's 36% EBC vote. And you said the breakup was 26% Hindus, 10% Muslims. Let's come to the factor that you alluded to, which is the Dalit vote or the scheduled caste vote. And here the scheduled caste population is around 19.7% according to the latest census, with Paswans, which is Chirag's party, having 5.3% of the votes, and the Ravidas community an equal number of 5.3%, followed by the Musahars and the Pan and Pasi communities. But Chirag Paswan's vote is, as you mentioned earlier, firmly back with the NDA this time, so that benefits them. But Tejasvi is aggressively viewing the rest of the Dalits, promising reservation hikes and land redistribution. And very interestingly, the Congress social justice plank also helps the MGB, and the fact that the Congress chief, Rajesh Kumar, belongs to the Ravidas community means that they are trying to neutralize the effect that NDA seem to have. So, Amitabh, will Dalit voters follow legacy loyalty or material incentives, or they really want change this time? What is your sense? What is your tracker showing?
Even in the Dalit community, there is talk of representation. Because as you mentioned, largely these 3 caste groups, Manji community, Paswan community, and Ravidas community, which account for 65% of the population of Dalits, have or rather occupy most of the powerful positions. There is also friction amongst these 3 communities. So if the Mahagathbandhan strategically places a non-Paswan candidate against a Paswan candidate, then it can hope to get the vote of the Ravidas community or even the Musar community, which is Mali. Because it's all about representation in Bihar. Correct. Now, this 5% Ravidas community, which is not talked about a lot, is actually higher than the Paswan community, but it's not consolidated. Even BSP gets a significant chunk in bordering areas of UP, largely your Saran, Bhojpur, and even in Magadh. BSP has decent presence there. So if the Congress party announces or the Mahagathbandhan announces Rajesh Ramji as the deputy CM face, then it can consolidate this vote block further, because this 5% block is up for grabs, because there is no corresponding Ravidas community deputy CM or leader, because here you have Manji community and Paswan community who are big faces of the NDA. So it's all about strategic ticket distribution in the end, which could help Mahagathbandhan get some traction or rather maintain the momentum which it had received amongst the Dalit community in the Lok Sabha elections.
And factor number 10, which is the final X factor that we are looking at, is the Muslim vote. The Muslims constitute 17.7% of the vote, which interestingly, as you had mentioned earlier, they're broken up into castes, with the estimate being 4.6% of the Muslims are considered upper castes, with the Sheikh, the Pathans, and the Sayyid communities. Among OBCs, they have 1% with the Surajpuri Muslims, and with the EBCs, which you mentioned, they have 8.3% estimated with the Mormon, Julahas, Danyas, and Kunjaras. I hope the pronunciation is right. Traditionally, over 80% of Bihar's Muslim voters have backed the RJD Congress alliance. However, this time, could tactical voting create some dilemma on their choices of who they will vote for? And with PK entering the fray on a secular anti-dynasty plank, and the Congress energized by the Rahul Gandhi's vote chori campaign, will the Muslim vote stay consolidated or fragmented across the alliances? What is the estimate of that? And also the impact of overseas MIM on the voting pattern, which he got some last time. what would be the impact? Will be the Muslim vote be fragmented, or will they go solidly to the MGB this time?
See, it's largely going to stay with Mahagathbandhan. However, Owaisi will still make some headway in the Simanchal region, probably a bit lesser than last time, because mind you, even in Lok Sabha election, AIMIM was leading in two Vidhan Sabha seats from Simanchal. So, and we are talking about a Vidhan Sabha election now. And Prashant Kishore also has gained some traction amongst Muslim youth. See, the issue is again amongst Muslims, there is a talk about representation. Today, only 8% of the MLAs in Bihar Assembly are from the Muslim community, which has a 18% population.
Right.
The Mahagathbandhan gave only 12.5% tickets to Muslims because it also leads to some sort of a polarization. Correct. So that is what OIC is playing on. That Mahagathbandhan takes your votes, but it's not giving tickets to Muslim candidates, and that worked last time. The issue in Bihar is that the Muslim population is concentrated. 70% of Muslim population lives in North Bihar, which has around 58% seats. So in Simanchal, 27% of the Muslim population of the state is there. So the presence is in pockets, unlike a UP or a West Bengal where across regions, of course, UP also you have some pockets, across regions they are not 18%. So if you count the Muslim influence seats, they are not even 40, where they could make a difference. Plus, because Simanchal has a high population of Muslims, in the entire North Belt, polarization comes into play. So in the entire North Belt, even in Simanchal, NDA won 12 of 24 seats. Even in the Lok Sabha, it won 10 of 24. Because counter consolidation also works, and it also has an impact over the entire North Belt, which has 140 seats. So that is an issue also which the Mahagathbandhan faces. So yes, they are largely going to be solidly behind Mahagathbandhan. OIC will still get some votes. Prashant will also get some traction. Congress will neutralize with its own policies, or let's say the face of Rahul Gandhi, a secular face with whatever representation talks which are going on in the community. So he could still hold on to some of the votes. But the impact is not big because there are only 57 seats where Muslim Yadav combined population is more than 35%.
Right.
But if we bring it down to 32, it becomes around 83 seats. But there also the honors are shared because of polarization. Because 35% cannot get you a seat, correct? You need 50% or rather 45% votes to win a seat. So that's the dilemma of the Muslim strategy or the Muslim play there.
So we have covered 10 X factors very exhaustively on each of these, Amitabh. And we had women versus youth, caste versus aspiration, welfare versus reform, fatigue versus loyalty, dynasty versus freshness, many narratives that will determine the outcome of this particular legacy. Now, if finally, on the last question, who has the edge at this moment? Where are you putting your bets on? Just stick your neck out and tell us at the starting block, who do you think is ahead of the race and why?
See, from now on, the entire game is on candidates, sir. Which party gets to contest which seat in the alliance? What sort of vote transfer happens? What do rebels do? Do they stand as independents? Who has a better rebel management? Do they go to Prashant Kishore and get a symbol? So all of it's now largely a hyper-local play because there are no overarching themes unlike last time. Last time, COVID was an overarching theme and unemployment also was a big issue last time. So, I mean, the latest tracker puts NDA ahead at 1.6% vote share because we've not done a seat conversion because unless you have candidates, you cannot do a seat conversion. I don't know how people do it. But that's 1.6% also falls within the margin of error. The margin of error is 3%. So it's a keenly contested election, which is open for grabs, and any party who is going to do better ticket distribution and better rebel management might have the edge as of today, because trackers always are positioned as of today because anything can happen tomorrow. NDA has a slight edge. in this contest.
Interesting. And I think what could also make a difference this time is possibly the call for change, and that could blow both ways. But certainly, I think the Bihar electorate had been there last week as restive and wants things to happen. They have seen the rest of the country forge ahead. They might have had very good growth rate, but they're still, as you mentioned earlier, far below the per capita income, large amount of migration, unemployment issues, and it is to be seen what will finally determine the outcome, which will propel, which key factor will propel the outcome that's there. But Amitabh Tiwari, thank you again for your incisive insights. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and your fountain of knowledge on all these things. Thank you very much for this. For more details, you could read the cover story in the latest India Today magazine on the high-stakes battle for Bihar, written by my colleague Amitabh Srivastava, who's based in Bihar. Thank you for being with me in this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing But the Truth.